All righty. All Facts Media. My name is Andrew Robinson. I'm here with my twin brother, Aaron Robinson. And today we are joined by a Maryland legend. We got former DeMatt the Catholic standout, University of Maryland star, and current George Mason assistant men's basketball coach, Duane Simpkins here on All Facts. Thank you for joining us today.
I appreciate you guys having me on, man. Thanks so much for taking the time for me.
No problem. So obviously, like I mentioned before, man, I mean, you're very revered in the state of Maryland. Obviously, attending the Matha, becoming an All-American there, and then going on to attend the University of Maryland, man. So just talk about your journey, just from playing basketball, and then how you got into coaching, and then just kind of how you got to where you are today.
Cool, man. Obviously, I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., Southeast D.C. until about the age of 11, 12 years old. My mom passed away around that time. And, during that time in the mid-'80s, man, the crack epidemic was huge. It got to the point, my dad was like, hey, man, I can't raise two boys by myself in the inner city. So Pops got the insurance money. We went out to Fort Washington. We first moved out there. I thought it was like another country, another state. I'm thinking like because at the time it was Fort Washington is not like what it is now, but it seemed like it was such a far place away. There was no boys club. I was used to playing in number 11 boys and girls club in Southeast, and there was no boys club that you could just go to every day and drop your bag and just go hoop all day. So I ended up playing at Silver Hill Boys and Girls Club while still playing in the city at number 10 Boys and Girls Club in Northwest DC, playing for one of the great coaches that I've ever had, Ed Hill. From there, I moved on, man, and I was fortunate enough to be quote unquote recruited to DeMatt High School. I went there and was fortunate enough to play as a freshman and play varsity basketball and had a pretty good career there. We won a couple of city titles, went to 3 of them. I was fortunate enough to be a McDonald's All-American, and I came out and went to University of Maryland. I wanted to stay close to home, and I was fortunate enough to have some really good players come join me. Joe Smith, who was a year behind me, Keith Booth. Keith and I played AAU basketball with each other. Johnny Rhodes, Exree Hip, all of those guys, man, we were really, really good players, and I was glad that we were able to come together and have some success. We went to 2 Sweet 16s while we were there. I firmly believe if we had Joe Smith for one more year, we'd probably win a national championship. But it's tough to tell a dude you're the number 1 overall pick and not to go. So he had to do what he had to do, man. And I was after that, I went and played overseas for several years. I had 2 separate stints. I actually went over for the first couple of years that my daughter was born and stopped playing for about 3 years. At that time, that was my first time I got some coaching experience. I was the assistant coach for the JV at DeMatha for a year. Then the following year, Joe Wooten got the job at Bishop O'Connell, and he tapped me to be his lead assistant for that upcoming season. And that was around the time, man, I still had the bug. I wanted to go back overseas and play in a little bit, which I did, and did that for a couple more years. And then when I got back, I got the head coach job at Sitwell Friends. I was there for 2 years. We won the championship, went undefeated in league play my second year. And then from there, I went and was the head coach at St. Albans School for 4 years. And we started to build that program up. And I knew I wanted to try to get coaching in college and everything. And I was presented with an opportunity to become a director of basketball operations at Towson University for Coach Pat Scurry, his first year there. So I did that for 1 year, and then I was fortunate enough to get the assistant coach's job at UNC Greensboro under Wes Miller, who's still there right now doing a hell of a job. That was Wes's first full year being a head coach and everything. So fast forward, I was there for 3 years, and now I've been at George Mason now for 5 years. So I know that's a long-winded response, but that's pretty much my how I got to where I am right now.
That's great.
Definitely a well-traveled journeyman right there for basketball to coaching and everything. But obviously this year at George Mason, all around the country, there was this pandemic that put a halt on everybody's seasons. So talk about the way that you guys specifically dealt with after you guys played that first round game in the A-10 tournament and then weren't able to play your second round game. Talk about the emotion and how you guys dealt with kind of that whole situation with the coronavirus in the end of your season.
Yeah, man, it was tough. We had a tough conference season. Out of conference, we were 11-1. We started off We had 2 seniors on this year's team. One senior, he was out for the whole year. We knew he wasn't coming back. Our other senior, who was second team All A-10 player, he was most improved player of the year before. He broke his foot in the preseason. He led us in scoring, rebounds, steals, minutes played. I mean, we were really banking on him, and we held the fort down pretty good without him in conference play. He came back and broke his foot again in the second conference game, and that kind of derailed our season. But we went through the season, man. We had some ups and downs. We had some really close games. We had Dayton, on the ropes, I thought, at home with a 2-point game with a minute and a half to go. And I thought, the reason why I bring that up is because I thought we were really hitting our stride going into the tournament. We knew that we weren't going to win the regular season championship or anything like that. But our thing was, hey, let's play our best basketball going into the tournament. And we had a really good game against St. Joe's, and we were preparing to play St. Bonaventure the next day. And that game was supposed to be on a Thursday. I remember Wednesday night, I'm sitting at me and my partner were working on the film study. We're downstairs in the lobby, and I saw it come across my phone that a couple of Utah Jazz players were tested positive. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. And sure enough, the following day, we knew that we got notification that everything was going to be canceled for the most part. So it was really disappointing. I felt really bad for those guys. Obviously none of our seniors were playing, but my heart really went out to a number of the guys in college basketball that were seniors. They wouldn't get an opportunity to finish their careers the way they wanted to. But fast forward, the thing that we did once we did get home, we've never used Zoom before, any of this technology as a full staff with our players. We got everybody up to speed on Zoom, had them download everything. We got together with our academic coordinator to make sure that everybody got the coursework that they needed, got in contact with their professors, and we were preparing to have everybody pretty much having online classes moving forward. So we had to make sure that everybody was being organized with making sure that they had the proper paperwork and technology, make sure all that stuff was straight. And so what we do now, like we get together as a staff a couple of days a week. We have our Zoom conference calls. We may last for an hour, maybe 2 hours. And we also get together with our team at least once a week. And we'll have, sometimes we'll have our sports nutritionist online with us. Our academic coordinator may be online. Our strength and conditioning coach may be there. So we just try to make sure we stay in contact with our guys, man, throughout the course of the week.
Right. Obviously, coming from me and my brother, we played this year at Coppin State, and we were seniors who kind of had our seasons cut short before the season ended, before we got a chance to play in the conference tournament. For us, when it happened, there was a little bit of, I didn't really understand. I was like, man, we may as well just play the tournament, finish out the weekend and kind of like, just we'll take the risk. But obviously, looking back on it now, seeing how seriously this virus is and how it's progressed, I kind of understand that wasn't the right decision at the time. So for you being a coach, what was your message and your staff's message to the players at the time, who I'm sure didn't really understand why that was happening at the moment? Kind of, what was your message to your players when that came down?
Just that this was uncharted territory. We were dealing with, a virus that supposedly, and it was still early at the time, but the things that we had read was that this is kind of like the flu, but much more severe. And say, hey, fellas, like we don't have all the answers as to why this is more severe than other things. But this is what the scientists who are leading all this stuff, this is what they're saying. And we as coaches, we kind of felt the same thing at the time. Like, hey, man, we should be able to just finish this thing out through Sunday, and kind of let it go from there. But in retrospect, it was the right thing to do, especially now with New York being one of the hot spots with the coronavirus. It was the absolute right thing to do.
All right.
Obviously, from that point forward, from the time that the season was ended, to now, and you guys are kind of turning that page, looking forward to next season. So, obviously, right now you can't have any recruits on campus. Nobody can, go to see any players. So, how are you guys kind of adjusted, your recruiting plans for next year based on this virus?
Well, we're in a pretty good situation in that we didn't have a ton of scholarships available. We signed 3 young men that were coming in. We had 1 transfer, so we knew we had 1 scholarship. So it's not like we were trying to fill 4 or 5 different scholarships. I talked to some of my guys who are in the business, man, and they're like, every day they're hitting the phones, and they're hitting the phones all day long because it's 650 transfers that are out there now. So we're in a situation like, yeah, we are scouring, making phone calls and connecting with people, but at the same time, like, we may not use the scholarship. We are in that situation right now, so we're fortunate when it comes to that. But like you said, it's a lot of, some of the guys that we've been recruiting, it's getting in contact via, over text, over the phone, FaceTime, and things like that. We're pretty much focusing on that 2021 class, guys who are rising seniors right now. So just making sure we stay in contact with those guys and just having a concerted effort. If some guys we're going to recruit as a staff, some guys I've got the lead on, or somebody else on my staff may have the lead on those guys. But pretty much, man, using technology to communicate with guys.
Right. Obviously, this coronavirus has kind of created a domino effect to where, at first it was just the season was canceled, and then, now moving forward to where players are being delayed for like summer workouts, and summer school programs are kind of like, it's really up in the air as far as when guys can return to campus. So what are some things that you guys have done to kind of make sure your players are staying in shape, and kind of over the summer? What are some ways that you guys have just tried to, provide programming and some kind of structure for your players?
So our strength and conditioning coach was able to get out to our guys a detailed workout, a number of exercises that our guys have already done, things that you don't necessarily need weights for. It's pretty much body weight. We call them jailhouse workouts. So they've got those. They got their conditioning things. Some things, I think it's 2 or 3 days a week. Those guys are just doing certain things, sprinting wise, agility wise. And then obviously we try to educate these guys, give them some videos of like certain ball handling drills to do that are stationary, on the move, things like that. So that's pretty much the only thing that we can do. But I think our strength and conditioning coach, who was the best in the business, he's the best I've ever been around. He's done a really good job of giving these guys a detailed workout sheet and then following up with these guys throughout the course of the week.
Has this in any way affected you guys planning for summer workouts? Because after summer one, usually for most schools starts around that May period, and obviously we might still be on that lockdown. I think for Maryland and Virginia, I think we are going to be locked down until at least mid-June. So, have you guys started thinking about how this is going to impact you guys' summer program?
Oh, absolutely, man. We normally have like an 8-week session starting in like the second week of June, going through July, early August, and as it stands right now, that's probably not going to happen. I mean, we're preparing that's not going to happen. If it does, the thing now we're going to have to find out is like, okay, obviously the whole school may not be open, but if we are doing online classes and we have a moderate opening to campus, can we have our guys on campus? And if we do, we'll go about business as usual and have our workouts, 3 or 4 days out of the week and basketball workouts. But if not, man, this is going to be uncharted territory. We're pretty much going to have to continue to do the things we're doing right now. And I feel for our guys that are returning, but I feel even more for those guys who are freshmen coming in, because I think that's a real critical time for those guys to kind of get their feet wet and kind of get up to speed on what it looks like to be a college student athlete.
Right. How did you feel when the NCAA determined that they weren't going to award extra year of eligibility for seniors who kind of had their seasons cut short? Did you agree with that, or did you feel like the NCAA should have, allowed seniors to come back and have another year if they didn't get to finish their seasons?
Right. In theory, I'm with the seniors. You want to be able to finish out a complete season, but from a business standpoint, from a financial standpoint, fiscal standpoint, I knew that wasn't going to happen. You're talking about redoing scholarships for that many student athletes to come back on campus, and then you got a domino effect. All right, how does that affect the number of scholarships that you're now carrying? We had already signed 3 guys. We had 1 scholarship open. If we bring back our 2 scholarship guys that are seniors, now we got 14 or 15. So you go over the limit. I always thought that the guys who were student athletes from the spring, I thought that they would have a shot at getting that, which they did. It kind of makes sense, right? But those seniors that played in those winter sports, I know enough people were going to make the argument, hey, 90% of your schedule, you're playing is already done in the books. You can't come back a whole year and get the 10% back. So I just thought from a financial standpoint that wasn't going to work.
Right.
One of the other things, so the NCAA was scheduled to vote on whether or not to give transfers who were leaving before they're graduated to be able to allow them to be immediately eligible. And obviously they moved that date back to June. So I guess what was your I know a lot of coaches that I spoke to specifically said that they were kind of looking forward to having that vote pass so they could go after guys that were maybe sophomores or juniors that might not be able to sit out. I guess what's your opinion? Where do you stand on that issue? Do you think that guys that want to transfer should be able to be immediately eligible? And then also, I guess how did that affect in any way you guys planned recruiting wise?
It didn't affect us. We were aware of it that that legislation was on the table that it was going to be voted on in April. The sentiment amongst coaches was that we thought that was going to get passed. The question was going to be, when was it going to be enacted? Was it going to be for this upcoming season? Or was it going to be for the 2021 season? So I think it's funny, just from hearing different people talk and different student athletes, I think a number of kids have assumed that was going to take place for this year. And I think that's in part why you see, instead of 400 transfers this time of year, now you're up to 650. I think a number of people are kind of banking on being immediately eligible. So they're rolling the dice when it comes to that. But for us, we haven't made any specific plans because this may be passed to take advantage of it this year per se. Again, because we got one scholarship.
Right.
Do you think, I guess this is more of an opinion question, do you think that, what effect do you think that will have on college basketball if they allow transfers, to be immediately eligible?
Oh, it's going to be free agency. It'll be the wild, wild west. You know what I mean? You're going to have situations where, George Mason is playing, I'm not going to say a specific school, but, we're playing a quote unquote high major school. And, one of our players has a big game. He's got 20 and 10. That handshake line is going to be pretty interesting. Hey, man, I always thought you were a high major player, man. Like, always love watching you play. Let's stay in contact. It's going to be a whole lot of that. There'll be a whole lot of that. So, it's I don't necessarily like to see it, but if it does happen, we got to make our changes and adjustments. And I think it's going to it'll change your outlook in terms of recruiting. A lot of times right now we try to project where we'll be in 2 years and what our needs will be and everything. I think it'll just force you to have to look at your roster and, how it's composed year to year, because it could change every single year, whether you got a kid who averaged 20 a game or somebody who averaged 5 a game. One person may be unhappy. The other person may say, well, shoot, I can play at a higher level. So you just got to be really flexible and be ready to pivot to whatever situation brings itself to the forefront.
Right. And kind of on that same token, I know me personally, I've had a lot of discussions about this in the media lately about this whole idea of, do you want to be a big fish in a small pond, or would you rather kind of go on to a bigger school and kind of just, be an average player or have the opportunity to potentially be an above average player? People always name guys like Steph Curry and Kawhi Leonard and the John Morants of the world who were able to make the NBA from these mid-major schools. But then there's also the idea that, those guys are 1 in a million. You know what I'm saying? There's not too many guys who have been able to make these smaller schools. So how do you feel about players kind of that obviously had that dream of reaching the NBA? Do you think that it's best for them to kind of try to play at the highest level, or do you think it's beneficial for them to kind of stay where they are and, be that big fish in a small pond?
I say every situation is different, man. I'll say that. And I'll also say that if you can play, they'll find you. And it's not like they got to look under a rock to find you if you play at Weber State or wherever, or George Mason. Like, you have staffs now in the NBA. I know these guys, they've got staffs of 10 guys that are scouting college players. The technology is different. This is much different than when I came up. I love Maryland in part because, I love watching Len Bias. I grew up with watching him and Keith Gatlin, and I loved Georgetown at the time. But when I was coming up, it was like, hey, if you were being considered to be one of the top players, in your mind, you're like, hey, I want to go play somewhere where I can play on TV. Well, everybody's on TV now. So that shouldn't be the case. But I think what's more important than anything that trumps everything, are you going to the place where there's a need for you, there's a want for you. Does it fit, your style of game and personality of your coaching? If your coach is a yeller and a screamer, and that's what he's used to, that's what he's always done, and that's not how you were coached or what you want to look forward to, it's probably not a place for you, no matter what level it is. But I just think, there has to be more guys that's got to be responsible for their own decisions. And when you do make those decisions, think about the right things. Don't think about what shoe brand they are, how many people, people come to the games or whatever. Like, truly look at what's the best fit for you in your game. If you really want to try to get the most out of that situation. Some guys, they may not want to. They may say, you know what, I'm cool with being a role player as long as I'm playing high major basketball. Some guys, they don't want to have that. So you got to each his own.
Right.
You guys are in kind of a unique position where you guys are kind of, I guess, in a bid that gets multiple bids into the tournament. So it's like, in a sense, you guys are kind of in that conference where you could be known as one of the higher level conferences, but at the same time, you're not like a Power 5 school. So it's not like, guys still might have that desire to transfer to the ACC or the Big Ten or the SEC. I guess for you guys specifically, in your case, over the last couple of years, how is this? Because obviously the transfer epidemic, as some people call it, has been, like you said, there's 600 something names in the portal this year, and it's kind of going up each and every year. How has that kind of affected you guys as an A10 school, where guys might be looking from smaller schools to transfer up, but also guys might be looking from your level to transfer higher?
Yeah, I just think. Hold on one second, man. I think I lost you guys. You guys there?
Yeah, we're there.
Yeah, we're still here.
Okay. For us, man, it's like you said, it's a kind of a catch-22. We're at a very good spot. We got multiple bids coming out of our league, but at the same time, are we the ACC? No, we're definitely not. Again, the thing that we try to sell, man, is like, there's a need for you here, there's a want for you here. It's kind of a catch-22, because if you're dealing with a young man who, if at the end of the day he says, you know what, when you recruited me, coach, I really thought I was a high major player, and our thing is, yeah, we think you are too. It's just not right now. In 2 years' time or a year's time, could you be that guy? Absolutely. And I think that goes for most high school players. When they come out of high school and they get to college, I don't care if you go to St. Peter's or if you go to George Mason, if you go to Mount St. Mary's. Like, if you're doing the work that you need to do and put in, and you're developing, by the time you're a sophomore, yeah, there should be an expectation that you can go and play at a Clemson or wherever else. I mean, that's just the way it is. But what I think will happen is, what you'll find is that there are going to be a number of young men that, who are quote unquote playing at low majors that may want to go up a level. It may be very good for George Mason. There'll be some guys who are in the A10 that may say, you know what, I'm good enough to go to a high major school and go to the SEC or whatever, and they'll do that. It's all going to be relative, man. As coaches, we're going to have to be very diligent in terms of, doing our homework as early as we possibly can to make sure we find guys that are right fit for our program.
Right. I think that's a great point that you make. I just wanted to ask you guys, obviously, being in the DMV, there's a plethora of talent here in this area with, kids that may not be like in compared to other areas where, they don't have as much of a talent base. Kind of what does that mean for you guys to kind of have that luxury of just, being in the DMV and being able to recruit all these kids here in this area from, obviously one of the most talented areas in the nation?
Yeah, man, it's a tremendous blessing. I didn't realize how good our basketball. I know we always had good basketball, but once you get a chance to go out and recruit in different parts of the country, I was in Carolina for 3 years, and there's a lot of talent in Carolina as well. It's not as concentrated, so I could very well go to a game, on a Wednesday night, and I may see 2 Division I ball players on that court that night. Doesn't mean that Carolina doesn't have players; they do, but they're so spread out. But you playing in the DMV, man, you can go to a game and you may have 4, 5, 6 guys that are Division I talent. They may be at varying levels. A guy who is a quote unquote low major, but is very talented. You can see him getting stronger and bigger. He may develop into a mid major or a high major, and so on and so forth. So this is a very unique area. I mean, very, very unique. We have very good coaches in different leagues: WCAC, Maryland Public School, Montgomery County, the IAC, the MAC. You just have so many good coaches to develop that talent. We're very, very blessed in this area.
That was the last question that I had for you. I don't know if there's anything else that Andrew wanted to ask for you. Was there, Drew?
Yeah, a little more just question on a lighter note. Obviously, you being like I said, Maryland alum, Maryland basketball, legend. Kind of what are your thoughts on kind of how Maryland has been able to kind of return to prominence lately? They've been ranked in the top 10 a lot this season. They've been able to, get a lot of high ranked recruits. So just for you, being a Maryland guy, what does it mean to kind of see Maryland kind of back at the top of college basketball?
Oh man, it's always great to see. I was pulling for those guys, man. I texted Coach Turgeon going into the Big Ten tournament because I thought that they had a chance to be really, really good. I really thought that. I thought they had the tournament, the kind of talent to possibly go to the Final Four. So, it's always good, man, when if the Redskins are winning this area and Maryland basketball is going well and Georgetown's going good, like this is a fun place to be. So it was good to see Maryland really taking strides to get back to that. And as it relates to the recruiting and stuff, man, I hear it all the time. Hey, Maryland's got to recruit locally and this and that. It is what it is, man. This is different than 25, 30 years ago where you had guys like myself that said, hey, I want to stay close to home because, I want to be on TV and they're recruiting me and I want to go there. Kids in this area, man, they may want to go away from home. I think that's a lot more in the equation now. And quite frankly, from year to year, their staff has got to do what's best for them. There may be a young man that they think is good enough for them, but the way that their roster is already composed, they might duplicate the position that they already have, and that kid's a freshman. There's just a different number of variables, man, that people don't always think about as it relates to recruiting, the local talent and everything. And obviously, I know for a fact they recruited some guys and they didn't get them. So it's not always a home run just because you recruit a kid and you're the big fish in the DMV that you're going to get a kid. That's just not the way it works.
Right. We want to say thank you, man, for taking time out and talking to us today, man. We really appreciate that. And, obviously we wish you guys at George Mason the best of luck moving forward. And we know you guys are going to have a ton of success.
I really appreciate it, man. You guys keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep being productive and keep helping the next man, man. That's what it's all about.
Sorry, Coach.
Appreciate it.
All right, man.
Stay safe out here.
You do the same, man. Stay out of the way.
Will do.
All right. Good deal.